There are some shows that leave a lasting impact on comedy due to their revolutionary and transgressive humour and introducing the world to the comedy's biggest talents. And other shows are remembered only as the Primadoral soup from which these talents emerged, some of which are almost lost to time. Once again, I'm going to unearth a forgotten show that ran for a single season on Paramount Comedy, now Comedy Central UK, that was never released on DVD and survives only in VHS strips of its original 1996 broadcast. This show starred Norman Lovett, Simon Pegg, Jessica Hines, Julian Barrett, Paul Morocco and Adam Bloom, and is one of only 2 TV shows directed by Edgar Wright.
What if you could isolate some men and ladies from the world? 6 years ago, I advertised for volunteers to come and stay at my isolated mansion. Perhaps for a bit, perhaps forever. My name is Dr. Lovett, and this is my asylum.
Due to a misunderstanding, pizza delivery driver Simon Pegg, played by Simon Pegg, accidentally becomes trapped in an experimental psychological facility. There, Dr. Lovett, played by Norman Lovett, has isolated a group of people from the world and brainwashed them. These include Martha, played by Jessica Hines, who has been shown nothing but daytime television and has become convinced that she is being sent messages through Countdown. Adam, played by Adam Bloom, a bank clerk forced to listen to nothing but Lenny Bruce until he becomes convinced that he is a stand-up comedian. Paul, played by Paul Morocco, a juggling flamenco guitarist forced to take a vow of silence who now communicates using his guitar and by spitting ping-pong balls. And Julian, played by Julian Barrett.
I am not Julian. I am merely wearing his skin. I am Victor Monroe.
A painter and decorator surrounded by nothing but Renaissance art, who now believes that he is an artist. Rounding out the cast is Mick O'Connor as bumbling security guard Nobby Shanks, and Jessica Hines again as psychotic Scot Nurse McFadden. She's like a combination of Nurse Hatchet from Cuckoo's Nest and Sue White from Green Wing. Speaking of Cuckoo's Nest, yes, this did remind me of the episode of Spaced. I really loved the characters in this, and the different dynamics they had with each other, like Victor being fascinated by Paul, but having a deep hatred for Adam. My 3 favourites are probably Nurse McFadden, Victor and Paul. The whole core cast do a great job with their characters. Interestingly enough, the character closest to anyone in Spaced is actually the pretentious artist played by Julian Barrett from The Mighty Boosh, who ended up inspiring Brian, a more sane and less emotionally stable aspiring artist played by Mark Heap, who is Daisy and Tim's neighbour in the series. Barrett would not only go on and explore pretentious artistry as Howard in The Mighty Boosh, but with Tim Hope in The Pod, an artsy techno parody that appeared in sketches on a few shows in the late 90s. The fact that these characters were purposefully driven and sane, rather than people in a hospital because of existing mental illnesses, made the show more tasteful than I expected. I think the discussion of whether or not media like this still perpetuates negative stereotype about mental health is still valid, but it's not a conversation I'm confident enough to have here. It definitely still has a dark sense of humour if you like that kind of thing, but less stuff crossed a line with me personally than I was expecting. It has plenty of weird moments, like the time Martha is seemingly abducted by aliens, and the time when Victor makes a working gun out of origami and holds Adam hostage. In between the episode's plotline, the show would also showcase a different stand-up comedian in each episode, as well as a song from the band David Devant and his Spirit Wife. There have been plenty of shows that attempted to do a variety show with an ongoing narrative in the last century, like 33 1/3 Revolutions per Monkey, the 1978 Ringo Special, and, most notoriously, the Star Wars Holiday Special. In other words, they're not only rarely successful, but they're some of the worst contributions to television ever, full of unfunny jokes and more of a focus on shoehorning in guest stars and songs than the story and characters, leaving the audience bored. Asylum actually succeeds by creating a setting in which these elements make sense and having more of a focus on the core characters. The only other example I know of a variety show tied together by a narrative is Magical Mystery Tour, and I've made a whole video essay about that up here. There's a really good variety of different styles of comedy in the Comedians Showcase too, from the puns of John Maloney to the observational comedy of Paul Tonkinson. It makes each episode fresh and exciting and showcases their material well. The only one I didn't like was David Walliams. I don't usually like his work, but he was one of the main writers in this alongside Edgar Wright in the main cast. So I imagine he contributed to some of the stuff I liked in parts of the show that focus on the main characters. Here, however, I just found his appearance to be really irritating.
Remember Jabba the Hutt? He sat there with a little man. He used to sit by him. Do you remember him? He'd go, you remember it? Do 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 you remember it? Slice of scrum. You remember it? Yeah, it's good, wasn't it?
This show made me obsessed with its theme song Ginger by indie art rock band David Devant and his Spirit Wife. It's such a great song. Their music videos towards the end of the show are always a highlight. They are really quirky and they were a really perfect fit for this show, especially when the songs thematically linked with the episodes. I first watched this show months ago and I'm still listening to them. For Edgar Wright fans, some of his trademark directorial style is here, but it is still in its infancy. Definitely don't expect something with the flourishes and attention to detail of Spaced and his feature films, but it's an interesting part of his legacy nonetheless. I definitely preferred it to the previous Paramount comedy show I reviewed. The cast was good in both, but the writing of this was just better and more consistently funny. It's a real shame that a higher quality version of this isn't available. I binged this series in about 48 hours and was honestly disappointed when I had finished them all. I definitely recommend it to fans of Spaced, Edgar Wright and any of the actors involved. It's not as good as their later work, but it honestly felt like I stumbled across something really special here. If you want to watch me review another Paramount comedy show where Julian Barrett and Noel Fielding started developing the mighty Boosh, you can watch my review of Unnatural Acts here. See you soon!